We've got a place out in the country in Marble Falls, and we go out there, and that is the most peaceful place on earth, and can work outdoors all day.
He loves being out there. He loves doing yard work. I'm sure it's a kind of therapy for him. I mean, he's something he's always loved to do, be outside, work with his hands, and I think it's really important to him.
He's obsessed with having the perfect yard and the perfect flowers and all the rest. And he is convinced he is the only one that can do this.
He used to go on vacation and he'd have me house sit and come water his plants. I was more scared to water his plants than to do my daily job for him.
He has a lawnmower that no one else can get on, that he doesn't believe any of the rest of us could master. And so I don't know how many times a week that grass gets mowed, but it's more than once, I know that.
That mower, I think that's probably the only thing that he won't let me use or get on out there.
One morning, God, he's gonna kill me for telling the story. One morning he wakes up and I get up and I go outside and I'm like, hey, you wanna teach me to ride that thing today? He goes, no, you can't ride this thing. It's too hard. You got levers here and you gotta turn them and you'll run into a tree and I don't wanna have to buy another one. I'm like, okay. So about an hour later, I get a call from him. I'm like, why is he calling me? He never calls anybody when he's out on this thing. He goes, well, I need you to come down at the end of the road. And he didn't tell me why. And he said, bring your truck, just come on down. So I go down there. The tractor, his Toro, is like this in a ditch. And he's like standing around, walking around like this.
Stephen, my son, had to go and get him out of the ditch, but like he wasn't the only one. Like these people in his truck stopped by and had to pull him out of the ditch, and he would kill me for saying this story because he doesn't remember it that way, but that's what happened.
I drive up and roll the window down, and I go, hey, can I help you? And he goes, get the rope out. We're getting this thing out of here right now. Don't tell anybody about this. So why not tell it on camera right now? But man, that was just like, it was just funny because after all those lectures about don't touch my Toro, you don't know how to do this, it's too hard for you.
DeLoss grew up in Riley, Kansas. Riley was a military town. Fort Riley, Kansas is one of the major Army bases in the country.
Riley, Kansas is a pretty interesting place. It's a small town. Population, I couldn't tell you, Google it, but it's not a lot.
Everybody knew everybody. As a kid, you could walk out the front door in the morning and not come home until night. It just is a perfect place to grow up.
DeLoss was one of 5 kids. He was 8 years old when his dad died, and that meant he had to go to work.
His mom was a school teacher, and she didn't make that much money, so he had to get a little job, riding a bicycle and doing the newspapers. And I think it really, turned him into who he is, and how hardworking he is.
I can't imagine losing a parent at the age that he lost. But being able to fight through that, be a leader in his family, kind of tells you what his makeup is. Plus, he married a wonderful woman who he claims he met when he was 6 and she was 5. So he had good taste early. And I think that just, the framework of that to me is amazing as well.
Him and Marianne, they both grew up in Kansas. And they met each other when they were like 5 years old. I mean, it's just, you don't really hear that anymore.
I was helping my dad change a tire on an old car. And this tall man and this little girl came walking down the street, and it was Marianne and her dad. And her dad and my dad visited and got to know each other, and she and I got to know each other just by looking at each other, never talked. But were friends, and then she became my younger sister's best friend, and she was at our house constantly. But I think I really figured out she was a girl when we were playing tackle football. My buddy and I were playing against my wife and my sister. And, you know, we played that, and I tackled her one time. I thought, this is not right. And I thought, boy, we better change how we're operating. But that was kind of the beginning of the end, or the beginning of the beginning.
They obviously started dating at a very young age, you know, somewhere junior high area. And he was a very competitive athlete, a great runner, you know, great all-around athlete, you know, when he was growing up in high school. Football, basketball, you know, any kind of sport, he was into it.
I ran track in high school and was successful there, won state championship. But I played football and we never lost a game, so I got recruited as a football player to Kansas State on a football scholarship. And my freshman year got hurt a knee, and they were going to do surgery on it, and I thought that was not a good thing, because back then if they did surgery, you were crippled for 6 months. So I went out for track, got a scholarship there, which I had to have. Got married after my sophomore year, and track was it.
Papa, the athlete, the track star, the awards, the accolades, you know, the male superstar athlete, and Nana would wait by the locker room for him to come out, and if he was mad about the way he performed, he'd send a note on a brown paper towel saying, go home, you know, he was, you know, down in the dumps or whatever. So this went on. They dated for a long time, and then when they went to K-State together, Alfred Hitchcock, now I don't think he was there, but he was the person who was judging the Royal Purple Queen contest for the most beautiful girl at K-State. And Nana won the contest and got the crown, and it was a big deal. And Papa got mad and left the party because she was getting a lot of attention.
I think my dad, would be the term? Beyonce's term would be, I need to put a ring on it or lock that down or something like that. And so my dad decided right after that announcement, apparently, that he needed to, you know, lock that down. And so they got engaged, and gosh, that was over 57 years ago.
My thought process was, she's going to get lots of opportunities, and I'm on a pretty short rope here, so I better get this thing done. So got it done, got married, and 58 years later, you know, I think it's going to work.
Their relationship has been the holy grail of relationships. Every time I think about, you know, my mom or my uncle or my aunt or me or my cousins and our relationships with people, we have a standard and they set the bar really high.
It's hard for me to even imagine DeLoss without Marianne, or Marianne without DeLoss. I mean, they are a couple. They are together, and you know, so supportive and so loving. And I think everybody would like for their marriage to be like DeLoss and Marianne's.
DeLoss loves Kansas State as much as anything in the world. He loves the state of Kansas. He loves Riley, Kansas. And he was Kansas State. He was a football player, athlete in track, and then coach, administrator at the highest level.
K-State is good people. I mean, they're just really, really wonderful people. I went into the Army and came out of the Army, and the track coach said, would you help me coach the track team while you were just hanging out? And I did, and I liked that. And the AD came down one afternoon. It was very different. HR was very different then. The AD came down, put his arm around me, and he said, you want to be the ticket manager? I said, well, you know, I don't know what a ticket manager does, but, you know, if you let me be assistant track coach, I'd love to be the ticket manager. So I coached 2 years as an assistant coach and ticket manager, and then the coach retired. And the AD said, are you interested in it? And I said, yeah, you know, I really was, but I was 25 years old at the time. And so I did the interview with the AD, did the interview with the faculty rep, went to the president's office to be interviewed by the president. And at the end of the interview, he said, what are you going to do if you don't get the job? And I said, I'm going to go coach high school track. And he said, well, we'd sure hate to lose Mary Ann. Mary Ann worked for the president. He didn't want to lose her. I got the track job.
DeLoss was a great track coach. He had 2 relay teams from Kansas State that held the world record in the 2-mile relay and the distance medley relay. And they were all from within 200 miles of Kansas State. Now you need to know that never happens anymore. So that means they had a coach that knew what he was doing.
His demeanor most of the time belies an incredible competitiveness with him. We were running 140 miles a week, and our competitors weren't doing near the work we were doing, but the speech was always, if you guys can survive this, you're going to be a lot tougher than anybody else. And that's really what happened. Our success was built on the fact that we knew we outworked everybody that we competed against.
I don't think there's a better job in the world than coaching. Being around young people, watching them grow, having a part in changing their lives, helping them be better people, seeing them win, seeing them accomplish things, see them get degrees. I love coaching.
Dodds was a pretty successful track coach at Kansas State, and I watched him closely and actually offered him an opportunity to work for the Big 8 Conference when I was commissioner. And I thought Dodds was going to come, but lo and behold, my good friend Ernie Barrett, who was the athletic director at Kansas State at the time, told Dodds if he stayed there, he'd build him a new track. Well, after 2 years of continuing as track coach, I called up Dodzer and I said, you know what? It's time for you to stop watching those guys run around in circles involved in athletic administration. And fortunately, he did join me with the Big 8 Conference, and as you might imagine, he was a highly responsible and admirable and very strong employee.
He became an administrator, assistant commissioner in the Big 8 Conference at that time, which was headquartered in Kansas City. So DeLoss and Mary Ann and the family moved to Kansas City, and it was a wonderful opportunity. And soon thereafter, he went back to Kansas State, of course, as a director of athletics before he came to Austin and served his 32 years as director of athletics for the Longhorns.
Being AD at K-State was being home. I was AD there 3 years, knew everybody, we were liked, we were successful. We took a program that was on NCAA probation, that had financial penalties, and got that cleaned up. We were in debt, we got them out of debt. We loved that place. It was home.
He was like the hero at Kansas State in our community. Everybody loved him. And I think the first battle coming to the University of Texas was that nobody loved him.
He'd been in Kansas his whole life. My mom had been in Kansas her whole life. And K-State is a great university, but it's a different level when you come to the University of Texas. And there's a different level of scrutiny, there are different expectations. It's just a different environment.
Leaving Kansas to come to Texas was really the hardest thing we've probably ever done professionally. Didn't know anybody, nobody knew what an athletic director did. Texas didn't have athletic director, they had Coach Royal was it. And we had major issues in basketball and football and financially, we had financial issues.
When he came in the early 80s, it was a changing time in all of college athletics, and particularly in college football. Texas had existed with tickets, bowl games, and television revenue. And that was enough in those days. But as Title IX came and there had to be more money to fund the women's program, you had to do more things to A, raise money, but B, be prepared to step toward the 21st century.
We were going through some new challenges at Texas. A new conference likely was on the horizon. We were adding 3 sports, and at the time, DeLoss and Jody were our athletic directors. And I just watched the two of them, these two great administrators and coaches really coach all of us on how this was going to be achieved. And they began the process of merging our units within athletics together, starting with external and fundraising and then going from there. Again, demanding the best of everybody in this endeavor, because it was all about what we had to do for our current and soon-to-be new student athletes in sports. Building facilities from scratch, funding scholarships from scratch, hiring coaches from scratch, and trying to do things together.
DeLoss was a pioneer when it came to fundraising. He looked at all the sports that were individually fundraising and reaching out to donors and establishing, if you will, a donor base. And he said, this is not the best way for athletics to work together. He said, we need to find a way to centralize this and put all of our interests in the same bucket. And so it was that foresight that established the Longhorn Foundation so many years ago.
The foundation became the fundraising arm for all athletics. There was collaboration between staffs in every area, and I think that was a real benchmark for athletics, and it certainly could not have happened without someone like DeLoss Dodds.
He took this program and slowly and steadily built it into the most profitable athletic department in the country.
It allowed us to use the money primarily from football to do the other things that were so sorely needed. And it made all the difference in the world.
Great leaders have great vision, and DeLoss clearly has great vision. He saw the need to expand the stadium, the whole Longhorn Foundation, upper tiers, facilities, new stadiums, new relationships. He was looking down the road, looking into the future, and managed to put together the money and the financing and the support to do those things before the rank and file really understood we needed them.
Nothing compares to what the University of Texas provides. You know, to have everything right here and have it be state of the art and have it be first class, the Texas way, you know, you can't say enough. And it all started behind the scenes, and that's with the athletic directors and especially with DeLoss.
DeLoss Dodds always had the welfare of the student athletes in his mind when any decision was made. And I think that's probably the thing that made him so great at what he did. I'm going to put the student athletes first, and I'm going to create an environment where they can be successful.
He gave us as athletes, as football players, the resources to be successful. And there was never a question that we weren't going to have what we needed to be ready to play. And I know that came from Coach Dodds.
I got to play in one of the best facilities in the country, and it was because of him and his relationship with Mike Myers that was able to happen.
Well, I've said this not to everyone I've ever talked to. DeLoss is a unique fundraiser, and I've had a lot of people hit on me in my life about raising money, and DeLoss had that ability to go about it in a way that you didn't feel like you were getting hit on.
Myers was one of the first people I met coming to Texas, and it took me 10 years for him to give us any money. And then since then, we can't get him stopped.
And very quietly just asked me if I wanted to help a little bit, and I did a little bit, and then next thing I knew, it got to be bigger than that.
We did things at Texas you couldn't do other places because of the resources of the people that graduated from Texas or love the University of Texas. And you build relationships, which is, the basis of all of this. And then you let people know what you need to accomplish goals at the university. And they decide if they want to be a part of it.
He said, the trick to this business is to get people to do what you want them to do without telling them to do it. And that's really, I think that summarizes his style. he is so successful and has been so successful bringing the University of Texas athletics to where it is today. And he did that in that very way. Every step of the way, one person at a time, one issue at a time, one building block at a time.
I witnessed lots of deals go down that he was negotiating with various entities. And I would just sit back and watch and think, these people don't know what's about to hit them. And he was quiet and powerful, and deals would get done before these other participants even knew what was happening.
He would sit, and lots of times he'd look up and he said, but what about this? And what about that? And about halfway through the conversation, you realize you've been had, because he would do it in such a way that it was not antagonistic, but he would do it in such a way that he was determined. He already knew the answer, what he was going to ask you, because he was so bright, he would understand more of what he was asking you than you understood sometimes about what you were doing.
In all of the things that evolved during DeLoss's time, probably nothing was as significant as the television changes. In 1984, Georgia and Oklahoma had filed suit against the NCAA for the right for schools to have their own television property, and they won the suit.
The Supreme Court ruled that the NCAA was in violation of the antitrust laws, and as a result, they no longer had control over college football television, which enabled the conferences and the institutions to develop their own programs.
DeLoss said, you know, we need to have our own conference radio package, and this is where Jim Host came in. And Host came in and took over the University of Texas and also brought some ideas from the SEC of what they were doing with their networks over there.
Our company, Host Communications, had a long-time relationship with the University of Texas. When the Southwest Conference broke up, I was asked which school did we want to represent individually. And I said without hesitation, the University of Texas, only because of the fact DeLoss Dodds is one of the best straight shooters I've ever been around.
We took Jim Host, who had done all the NCAA broadcasting, and got our own radio network away from what then was a Southwest Conference network. So we started with radio, and then we moved to television. And as the league began to build its packages, we started looking for the tangent of what was called the third tier. Because you had the first tier, which was going to be the major networks, second tier was going to be cable, and the third tier would be whatever you put together as a school. The final piece of that third tier came when the Longhorn Network was envisioned and then originated with a contract that DeLoss helped negotiate with ESPN.
Welcome into Longhorn Extra, everybody. I'm Lowell Galindo. This is what it looks like when it all comes together in the middle of this thing.
The Longhorn Network, I mean, it was so natural. It was staff meetings. Basketball's on TV, football's on TV, but baseball, women's volleyball, women's basketball. I mean, all these sports that no one could see unless they went to the event. And we started talking about, there's got to be some way we build something where we can put these events out, where the mom and the dads and the families can see their kids participate. And that just kind of grew and grew and grew, and then we got to the point where we figured out maybe how we could do it. Then we couldn't figure out how to pay for it. So I called A&M and I said, let's do a statewide network of all of our sports, and they declined to do that. And then we talked to Fox about it, and they came back and said, okay, we'll do it. We'll pay you $3 million a year. And we thought, oh my God, they're paying us to do this. And then ESPN became interested, and they're paying I think an average of $15 million a year, doing all the sports, doing everything we ever dreamed for our kids.
All those parents who want to see their golfer, their swimmer, their softball player do their thing from Minnesota or California, or wherever they live, and they can't come to Austin and watch their child compete.
but they can keep up with them on the Longhorn Network. What a gift to them. What a gift to all the fans that like to support the kids that are athletes. What a gift to all of them.
He is the only team in America with their own university network. ESPN and he and John Skipper, who's the best at what he does in the business, got together and made a network work for Texas. And it's unbelievable that the money it produces, the exposure that it's produced after 5 years is just unheard of across the country. And it is makes a few of the other schools, universities jealous, but it is what it is.
He built not only friends, but he built respect. The people that dealt with him did it because they respected him and they respected his opinion. And he believed that it could work, and so did ESPN. And that's how the Longhorn Network came about.
As big as the business of athletics became, and certainly continues to be, DeLoss always had more than just a business relationship with the most critical people in our industry. And that could range from the presidents of universities to important vendors like Host Communications or ESPN, our conference officials, NCAA officials, national governing body leaders, United States Olympic Committee folks. And when you have more than a business relationship with people, you get so much more out of conversations, not just about personal things, but about business, and you establish great networks.
He has always been a relationships person, and he will tell you, in fact, that his success today is based on the fact that he took the time to develop relationships.
I think that he had very clear vision, and he had a great understanding of people. He gave of himself 100% all of the time, and still maintained a family environment with all the people that he worked with. It didn't matter whether it was the President of the United States or the guy cleaning the restrooms at the baseball field. He communicated with everybody at the same level and did it very well.
With us as students and student athletes, as well as his coaching staff, his employees, everybody, he put himself last and he put everybody first. And when you have somebody that does that, you definitely want to play for somebody like that as well as work for someone like that.
I think it's a cliche to say that athletic departments are family, but truly DeLoss did make it that way. He made all of us feel like we were part of that family. His leadership skills were so great that I certainly never saw him raise a voice with anybody or get angry with anybody, but everybody wants to please DeLoss. Everybody wants to make DeLoss happy because everybody loves DeLoss and you don't want to let him down.
He had a combination of a guy that could run a big business like University of Texas Athletic Department Corporation, but he also was a guy that would walk around the halls and he knew everything about everybody. He knew about your relationships, about your kids. He made you feel like you were part of a family.
Anytime he would be out at any of our competitions, albeit the Texas Relays, conference meets, things of that sort, he was always talking with parents, talking with the student athletes and stuff. And I thought that went a long ways because, it's one thing to be, the figurehead of the athletic department, but at the same time, I think that really the message that he sent to the student athletes is that, we are important here.
He would show up to practice and not need to be seen. He just wanted to be there, check it out. He didn't want Coach Brown to feel pressured. He didn't want us as players to feel pressured. He just wanted to be a part of the program and watch us play and appreciate and wanted us to do our jobs right, to compete, to work hard. And you could just feel that from him anytime he was around.
I think everybody at the University of Texas during my time there displayed his leadership and the things that he did and the way that he believed in everybody that worked for him. And I think that's what made the culture of the athletic department one of the best.
The way he managed the program, the way he led the program was, for any student athlete that got to play here under his tenure, was just a remarkable experience. He wanted to bring in the best coaches. You knew that. He wanted to bring in the best administrators, the best staff, and we all had the opportunity to experience and benefit from that. And that is what true leadership is. It's not about being it all yourself. It's about finding the right people who can play the right role in these kids' lives. And you could tell that he took that mission very seriously.
Getting a coach right is the essence of our business, truly, because those are the individuals who are closest to the student athletes. They're identifying our student athletes, they're recruiting them, and they're caretaking them. So his ability to really get down and screen, if you will, more the person than the coach, was always amazing.
I mean, you look at the three coaches that were here forever, Coach Barnes, Coach Carrito, and Coach Brown. I mean, those guys didn't just by luck or by chance come here. DeLoss brought those guys here, and they were here for a long time, and he knew what he was looking for. He knew what fit Texas, and unless you've played here or grown up here or been a part of the program, you don't really understand the idea of Texas until you get here. And there's no one better that understands that than Coach Dodds.
DeLoss is such a relationship guy, and he looks for coaches that'll really build a relationship with the athletic department, who really care about being a part of Texas athletics and kind of embodies everything it represents. But also that I think their priority is the student athletes and the relationship they have with the student athletes.
He led from an athletic standpoint as opposed to an administrative type leadership, because being a tremendous student athlete himself and coach, he understood the coaching side of it better than anyone I've ever dealt with. And because of that, I just think he had just incredible leadership skills.
He said, I want you to always go by the rules. And he said, I want you to take care of the student athletes. I want them to have a good experience at our school. And that was enough for me. Obviously at Texas, you know, you got to win, but he never mentioned that. He said, be honest, go by the rules, and you make sure these guys have a wonderful experience, and that's good enough for me.
He gave the coaches the best opportunity to be successful. He didn't micromanage, he didn't try to look over their shoulder, he didn't second guess. He simply created an environment where a coach could do what they do, and then he was always there in support of that.
He was one of those people that got things done, and I think that's why the coaches respected him so much, because he was not one of those guys who would tell you he's going to do something and he did not do it. He always found a way to make your program better, and coaches respected him so much because he wanted it to be the best. You know, being at University of Texas, you know, you're talking about being the best, that's what he wanted, but you saw that within your leader, and you saw that within DeLoss Dodds.
DeLoss is a highly competitive person. A lot of people don't know that. They know him as a laid-back, business-oriented, successful administrator. But I've seen him on the golf course, and I know that he and his good buddy, Mike Myers, who put this golf course together, and Bill Duval, are some of the most competitive people in collegiate athletics.
That calm demeanor masks an extremely competitive individual who is used to winning.
He treats it like we're playing for the national championship and we're just playing for $5.
He is one of the most competitive people I know, but just very under the radar competitive, that you don't really know how competitive he is. For example, just playing ping pong in the garage with Stefan or my mom. I mean, you could get in a fight with him or, you know, anyone in our family that'll last for days because you lost at ping pong.
Ping pong, cards, racquetball, you know, basketball in the front driveway. I mean, whatever it was a competition. And it was friendly. It was a friendly competition, but it was a competition.
Doug and my dad in the basement played ping pong every night. And the basement wall is cement, and they kept tallies. So Dad and Doug and my dad had tallies from the ceiling down to the floor, and Doug had no wins. Night after night after night after, it was vicious. And I never got to play, but I always went down and watched while my mom did the dishes. We did this after dinner.
We had one particular night where we had kind of set it up as the championship series, so to speak.
So my brother, you know, being competitive and all, he came down in a robe like a boxer with that song playing on the radio, "We are champions." And he was like, you know, doing boxing movements, coming down the stairs, running around the ping pong table like it was a rink. Anyway, so he was pretty much full of himself and thought he was going to win that time. And the problem was that he did win.
And my dad doesn't like to lose, even if it's in something like that. And so I don't think I'd go into all the details, but I do remember a ping pong paddle flying across the table at me and him not being happy at all. And we didn't play ping pong for a long time after that. And in fact, I didn't want to play ping pong for a long time after that. But you can't achieve what he's achieved without being very competitive.
He won as an athlete, he won as a coach, and he won as an athletic director. And to have the career he had at the University of Texas is remarkable. And that speaks volumes about his ability to manage situations, but also his people skills. And his competitiveness wasn't defensive. He just finalized things.
Southern California 41 to 38 to win the national championship of college football.
DeLoss created the most prolific athletic department in the history of college sports. I think there's no doubt about that in my mind. There's nobody else compares to us. He picked John Fields, won a national championship. He picked Rick Barnes, took us to the Final Four. He picked Mack Brown, won a national championship. Augie Garrido won a national championship. So DeLoss, when you look back at it, he created something nobody else has ever been able to create.
There was a lot of success on campus, from winning the national championship in football to swimming to track to volleyball to we were in a Final Four. So there was a lot of success going on, but the whole time that's going on, you get to watch a guy like DeLoss.
He was one of those rare people that anytime the light was about to shine on him, he would direct it to someone else. And very few people I've known in my life, particularly leaders of things, were willing to shine the light on others and let them shine.
At national championship games, you would see some athletic directors just all over the place for the entire ball game. You didn't see him until the very end. And when he did, it was a handshake, and he was obviously very, very pleased with what had happened. But he was not down there to take the glory.
He never put himself bigger than the university. He never put himself bigger than the coaches that he hired, and he never took credit for it. I've never heard or read an article where he took credit for any other success. And I think that's the key to him and how he wanted everyone to represent the University of Texas.
DeLoss is Texas, and in a lot of ways, Texas is DeLoss. He built it. He's the architect. He is what has made this place successful.
He was the gold standard. He was the person who was the gold standard as an athletics director. For one reason, you could always rely upon what he said. You could always rely upon it being the right thing to do. And the one thing about him was you knew he was going to come down on whatever the best interest was in behalf of the University of Texas.
I think it's like the golden era of some of our country. I think the 30 years that he spent here, if you go back and look where the university was and the athletic department was when he came here versus what we did in 30 or 31 years that he was here, is something that I don't believe will ever be repeated.
He was able to come to Austin and change the culture of the way the athletic department was set up, and with a lot of people that were used to doing it one way, and he came in and did it a better way, and it took a while for everybody to get used to it, but he's pretty well recognized nationally as put the foundation down for a great athletic department.
He probably started here in a time when the athletic director concept was still novel. You know, at the time it was probably the football coach would become the athletic director. I'm sure having box seats around the stadium, all the things, television contracts, all the things that he brought to the university and to the athletic department, along with treating kids really well and coaches really well, is what made him so unique. So he really was the pioneer in a lot of those areas, and he did it here at Texas and did it as well as anybody could do.
I think you can look at DeLoss's track record on paper at where he's been and what he's done and the accomplishments he has, but I don't think that tells the story of DeLoss Dodds. I think he's just a great person. People like to be around him. He's genuine, he's sincere, he wants the best out of everybody. And so I think that's the real story of DeLoss Dodds, just how good of a person he is.
You can go tier by tier. NCAA committees he served on, NCAA staff he worked with, his influence in the world of track and field. Certainly our conference, old and new, university officials, they will all say his influence and the ability to work with him or alongside him changed their lives.
He affected every individual that walked and stepped foot on the University of Texas. And he's a part of a lot of athletes that are now able to provide and take care of their families.
He changed athletic directors in their place on a campus in the business world forever.